Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to do an in-depth review of the CTP of Destruction because I think a lot of people have completed the quest pack, All Things New, that gives you the, I can't click it now, that gives you a CTP of Destruction when you complete it, and you may have gotten other CTPs of Destruction from the CTP selector in the Ant-Man Legendary Battle, or from gambling, or possibly from World Boss booty boxes, and because of that, and because of the abundance, more so now than ever in the community, of that particular CTP, because I think otherwise it's about the rarest CTP in terms of where we get other CTPs from, like Giant Boss Raid or other legendary battles. It's the most difficult one to find. So I wanted to discuss what makes the obelisk or the CTP so powerful, and then I wanted to give you guys suggestions and kind of at least 10 characters that I would recommend giving it to, so that you have, of course, somewhere to start if you have some extra ones like me and you want to equip them. So what makes the CTP of Destruction so good? Well, it's rare. It's a rare CTP in the sense that it's part PvP and part PvE. Because all of the other obelisks basically fall into the either strictly PvE category or basically strictly PvP category. Now it's one of only two obelisks that has a damage proc, the other being the CTP of Energy. So it means that those two are the only ones that are PvE versatile, because you basically need a damage proc to push high-level content, whether it's 2 million ABX score or it's stage 30, 40, 50, 60, etc. of World Boss Ultimate. It's just you have to have a damage proc for that. And so the four other obelisks that all have invincibility or they have the heal from the CTP of Refinement, they're just not an option. But as far as the PvE values of CTP of Energy and the CTP of Destruction, they're not that much difference. Both CTPs can roll up to 45% crit damage, so that is the same. The Ignore Dodge is traded for Guard Break Immunity, which makes it less valuable for PvE, but not a lot of PvE content rewards Ignore Dodge. Basically, there's one or 2 days out of 2 days out of the 2 weeks, basically 1 day per week in ABX and Corvus World Boss Ultimate. That's basically the only two PvE contents that require or reward you for having Ignore Dodge, so it's not a guarantee, it's not a requisite, whereas Guard Break does come in very handy, and then you trade the chain hit damage for penetration. Now, in general, the chain hit damage is very, very good for PvE content, World Boss, ABX, stuff like that, whereas the penetration is not. Enemies very rarely, if ever, put up a barrier or an immune effect or an invincibility effect. Basically, the best one that you can probably think of is the Frost Beast, who puts up a barrier from time to time. But it's a very easy barrier to get through. It's just a 20-hit barrier. You're going to get through that anyways. So in general, the CTP of Energy does end up edging out the CTP of Destruction. Maybe like if the CTP of Energy is a 10 out of 10 for PvE content, for like World Boss and stuff like that, the CTP of Destruction is only like a 7.5 or an 8. However, what makes the CTP of Destruction very good is those stats that we just covered. The Destructions, Guard Break Immunity, and Penetration. Those two abilities are very meta for PvP. And so that, combined with the damage proc and crit damage, make it a two-way obelisk that you can use for characters that you want to use in both game modes. And that's basically how I would describe the CTP of Destruction. It's the jack of all trades, master of none. It's not the best PvP obelisk, or PvP CTP, which is probably the CTP of Authority, and it's not the best PvE CTP, which is the CTP of Energy, but it does both well. And so I want to give you guys some suggestions on characters that you can equip it for, because it'll better illustrate what I'm trying to say. Because in general, you want to look for characters that need a CTP of Destruction, or how you can identify if a character needs a CTP of Destruction is if they don't have penetration on all of their skills. So a character like Quicksilver or Scarlet Witch, they have penetration on all of their abilities because it's one of their passive effects, and so because of that, it's less valuable to give them a CTP of Destruction because they're always penetrating, right? It's also less valuable for characters that don't need Guard Break Immunity, so that's another thing to consider, versus characters who absolutely need Guard Break Immunity. So a character like maybe not Captain America, not the best example, but let's say a character like Gambit. As much as a CTP of Destruction might appear good for him because of the penetration, because he only has penetration on one skill, because he's primarily using iframes and primarily not trying to get hit at all, giving him guard break immunity wouldn't really be that helpful. Or a character that already has super armor may not need the guard break immunity if you're just using them for PvE content. Like, for example, Luna Snow gets guard broken a lot, but because of her iframes and because of just the tremendous amount of damage that she does, you can just get away without having guard break immunity, even though she doesn't have super armor, because you're just destroying and melting your opponent and freezing them to death, I guess, before they can do anything. On the flip side, characters who get guard broken very easily at the beginning of skills, especially like Weapon Hex, are prime candidates for the CTP of Destruction because they absolutely need that guard break. And another example would be if Human Torch didn't deal fire damage. If his damage was some other type, he would absolutely be a great candidate for the CTP of Destruction because it's got the penetration, and the guard break would help him get guard broken less if you don't have Thing as a backup to give him super armor. So I'm going to go through some of these characters now. Probably the one I've recommended to you guys the most is Jean Grey. She doesn't have penetration on all of her skills. She has it as a buff that she can give herself with her 5th skill, which is great, and it's for 10 seconds. So I mean, if you're playing her manually, technically she can have penetration up all the time. But if you're going to play her auto, or if your skills get canceled and things like that, you won't have the penetration. And so because of that, having that extra penetration from a CTP of Destruction is really helpful for her, because she has skills that deal great damage, like her 4th skill that doesn't have or might not have penetration, especially if her 5th skill's on cooldown. Additionally, while she does give herself super armor for her 3rd skill or during her 3rd skill, she doesn't have it otherwise. And so because she has skills that don't have iframes, and because she can be guard broken and kind of like locked down, the guard break immunity from the CTP of Destruction is good for her. And while you may only be using her for PvP, those are still really important stats to have for the character. Another great example would be Deadpool. Now, Deadpool is probably most often recommended as CTP of Energy because people just want to go as high as possible for World Boss. But if you want to use him for PvP and World Boss, the CTP of Destruction is a really great kind of compromise, because you can still push, stage 50 and up, and you can also do some PvP because he doesn't have penetration on all of his skills, and especially if you open with his 4th skill, there's no penetration there, but you can one-shot a character if you trigger your proc, and your CTP of Destruction triggers while your 4th skill is happening, because it's such a long iframe that in the middle there, your proc will trigger, you'll penetrate their invincibility obelisk, and then you'll just go eat right through their invincibility shield and kill them. Whereas you have to get the 5th skill off to give him the penetration otherwise, and his 5th skill doesn't even have invincibility penetration. It only has immunity, shield, and barrier and super armor penetration. So it's actually a really good two-way obelisk for a character like Deadpool. Again, not the best PvP obelisk, which would be guard break, recovery rate, invincibility. Not the best PvE obelisk or CTP, but actually a great option if you're looking to do more with the character day by day, like in your daily routine. Another example is Captain America. His is a bit more niche, but in his case, while a CTP of Energy is really good for ABX, he does get guard broken a lot. And while he does give himself super armor when he uses his 5th skill, Heroic Fury, it only lasts for 5 seconds, and you can make mistakes, and you can get unlucky, and you can get guard broken by the Frost Beast. So if you talk to people who get 2 million consistently with Captain America, some of them might actually use CTPs of Destruction because it guarantees that you won't get guard broken, and because his damage is so tremendous, as long as you give him a high enough proc, 180 or 200%, you'll still be able to hit that milestone with a tier 3 Captain America, and then you won't necessarily need to use the CTP of Energy for him. A few other suggestions that I have for you guys for characters that make really good CTP of Destruction candidates. Spider-Man is a really good option because with his iframes and the penetration, because he has no penetration otherwise, you can one-shot characters in PvP, and then you can kind of stall with your iframes until your next damage proc. And of course, for any PvP character, guard break immunity is a must. Now, Spider-Man is maybe not as good as some of these other characters for PvP, but you can get some kills, you can stall enough to build up to your tier 3 skill, and then that will also penetrate, so then you have multiple opportunities to get through their armor and get through their invincibility and finish them off. Another candidate, which I actually just gave a CTP of Destruction to, is War Machine, and this is primarily because while I want to use him as a PvE character, he almost he almost always needs guard break immunity because he can get guard broken, especially when you're using his third skill. It's got good damage. And it's got the guard hit, but it's not an iframe, so it leaves you open. If you just do 4 and 5, yeah, you can get away with it, but those iframes are difficult to chain back to back, and his fourth skill puts him very close to the enemy at the end of the animation, which is prime time to get guard broken. In addition to War Machine, his best friend Iron Man is also a prime candidate for the CTP of Destruction because he also really lacks guard break immunity, and he has no super armor, and he gets punished pretty badly when he does his skills. While he does have immunity, he doesn't have a lot of iframes. With basically only 1.5 or 1 iframe, it's very easy for Tony Stark to get guard broken, and so the CTP of Destruction basically ensures that he never gets guard broken, and it gives him that extra punch for the penetration if you happen to want to use him for PvP, although there's no synergy with his shield on his Infinity War uniform. A few more options. I've already mentioned Weapon Hex to you guys. Thor is another possibility. Now, I am probably going to try this with my Thor once Captain America comes out, the Tier 3, if she is the de facto character for Universal Hero Day for ABX. If she's definitely going to hit 2 million and overthrow Thor, then I am probably going to give my Thor a CTP of Destruction and see if he can roll with some PvP, because he is definitely capable of one-shotting with his 5th skill, and that's just based on his chance to penetrate immunity and barrier. That's all he has. He doesn't even have the chance to penetrate invincibility. So those two abilities, combined with his massive damage and the fact that the 5th skill is a large AoE iframe, combined with the fact that he has the CTP of Destruction by his side, I think it actually might be a pretty interesting experiment. Yeah, you lose the lightning damage, but he still has enough punch to actually get through, and my Deadpool has been one-shotted multiple times by Tier 3 Thors doing their 5th skills, so I know exactly how it feels, and I kind of want to dish it back. The last 2 suggestions I have for you guys are native Tier 2s. The first one is Odin. Now, Odin is a pretty bad character at this point. I wouldn't recommend giving him a CTP of Destruction, but he does need guard break immunity, so that is kind of a given for him. If you're not giving him a CTP of Authority, it definitely needs to be another type of guard break obelisk, but the CTP of Destruction in this case would give him a more offensive build with the penetration, which he otherwise has none of, which may be good for Alliance Conquest if he's not dishing out enough damage with invincibility proc and he's dying at the end of it because he just gets chipped down because he doesn't have a heal. The Destruction CTP might shift things, but a much better native Tier 2 to consider, not to automatically equip, but just to consider a CTP of Destruction for, would be Thanos. Now, Thanos, of course, is basically the #1 or #2 PvP character in the game, so this obelisk with recovery rate is technically much better than any other obelisk, including all of the CTPs. However, some people do like to use Thanos for PvE content. Some people like to use him for Extreme Alliance Battle, and so in that case, if you want to use him for both Extreme Alliance Battle and PvP and Timeline Battle, then yes, the CTP of Destruction is your best two-way option. I'm not saying that is the best option to build Thanos, but it is the best option if you want to use him in both game modes, because he absolutely needs the guard break immunity for PvP. It's just not a question. It's a guarantee for Thanos. And then the penetration is really nice because he has a couple skills, like 1 especially that doesn't penetrate, 1 doesn't penetrate, and 4 doesn't penetrate. And so if he's not using 5 or 3, you can still catch people off guard. And of course, you can also penetrate invincibility, which his skills don't penetrate because they just have immunity, shield barrier, and super armor. So those are my suggestions for the characters, and because of the way the characters' skills are built and because of their passives, and they lack, you know, long iframes, or they lack invincibility, or they lack super armor and guard break immunity, they become better targets for CTPs of Destruction. And because of the way their skills animate, like for example, Weapon Hex's 5th skill takes so long to get into the iframe, or Iron Man's 5th skill, it's not an iframe at all, they are basically vulnerable to being guard broken by world bosses and PvP opponents if they don't have that setup, but you still want them to smash face and one-shot, so that's where the CTP of Destruction comes into play. So let me know what you guys think of kind of an in-depth discussion on one particular CTP. If you want to see more content like this for the other 5 CTPs, I can definitely go into detail using character models to describe what makes the CTP good for those characters, and then you can basically extrapolate and use that information for other future characters or just other characters on your roster. Hey, you know, I'm playing this character, I'm playing Punisher, and I'm getting guard broken a lot, but he still does good damage. I think I might use a CTP of Destruction on him, which is basically what I have a poor man CTP of Destruction right now. It's a guard break 200 proc. Bada boom. So let me know, hit me up in the comments whether you want more of that or not. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. Hit me up on Twitch for the Facebook live streams. Join the Discord. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.